Dear friends, welcome to The Health Seeker, a special episode of our program because we want to tell you about a research that has brought important results on the effectiveness of Life 120 lifestyle. And with us, we have science popularizer Adriano Panzironi. Welcome, Mr. Panzironi.
Thank you and welcome to our viewers.
Let's talk about this research right away. What is it?
Let's say I decided to carry out this scientific study to prove the effectiveness of the Life 120 lifestyle after all the criticism I have received over the years, where critics were saying and stating that it is not possible to heal with a proper lifestyle. Well, this longitudinal observational research actually proves that.
Here, so you decided to do this study, and you have locked it up here in the book Living to 120 The Healings, a book written forehands with the journalist Francesco Gianotti. And however, I want to ask you right away one very important thing. This title, The Healings, this is a word that you really caused you a lot of criticism, a controversial word.
You are right, because actually this book was initially supposed to be called The Testimonies, but then I decided before going to print to call it The Healings, because actually the results that we got with this observational study makes us understand that really these are healings. So it is important, in my opinion, to call a spade and not to be afraid instead of just making claims so that we are not criticized.
Look, you mentioned that it is important to call this book Healings. However, I think it is also important to understand what healings mean to you.
Certainly the word healings needs to be contextualized because there are pathologies that can hardly be called healed. For example, if we take the case of cancer, obviously dogmatic medicine tells us that a person with cancer can only be called cured if after 5 years there are still no cancer cells present. In fact, for this reason, even in this study, we did not want to include this pathology. In reality, however, there are so many other pathologies that can be called cured because upon discontinuation of those foods that I consider to be real poisons, people become healthy again to such an extent that they no longer suffer from that pathology. So it is correct to call these problem resolutions as true healings that obviously will be able to return to these diseases again, where the person returns to eating what are the typical dishes of the Mediterranean diet, such as bread, pasta, pizza, potatoes, rice and legumes.
And cause these pathologies. Look, let's talk right away then about this court. The court means that you have selected 1,000 people. We can see right away the first slide to see how this court is composed of. 565 are women, 435 are men. And what do you want to tell us? How were these 1,000 people selected?
These people are a good part, all the witnesses who came to the Health Seeker, our program. And then last year I made, actually at the turn of this year and last year, Panzironi come to dinner with us. It was this tour I made all over Italy where I met more than 5,000 people who are following the Life 120 lifestyle. And out of them we decided to include 1,000 people who were suffering from at least 3 diseases.
And now, Mr. Panzironi, let's talk about the diseases and alterations of the immune system, obviously related to the Life 120 lifestyle. And I would like to see the slide of allergies right away, because here we have 256 people who had allergy problems and 79% reported being cured of it. And let's add a 21% who got a very important improvement from this condition. Another figure that I read, obviously, from our record is that 95% of the subjects reported that they no longer use medications that they were taking before they started the Life 120 lifestyle, and 4% reduced the dose.
I think these are really extraordinary results because we know that a very high population in Italy and around the world suffers from this condition, and this condition is treated by dogmatic medicine simply with drugs. So nothing is done to prevent it from progressing or appearing, but only treating the symptoms, so basically giving antihistamines or cortisone. Well, those who follow the Life 120 lifestyle get very high cure rates and no longer use drugs.
Then I propose that we look at the asthma slide together. Here it is. The asthma slide tells us that 89% of the people who used to have problems no longer have problems, so they have resolved this pathology, along with an 11% who got an improvement, so we come to 100% here. I'm going to check regarding those who used to take medications for this pathology. 93% stated that they no longer use medications, so they no longer use medications, plus a 7% also here, so we come to 100% reduce the dose.
Yes, an extraordinary figure as well, because we know that asthma is one of the most serious diseases that can lead over time to an inefficiency of the respiratory system, and therefore can lead to people's deaths. And usually asthma sufferers suffer from it all their lives, and so they have to give themselves puffs, and you have to give cortisone to try to keep a condition at bay that never resolves and never cures. Well, by following the Life 120 lifestyle, you really do get extraordinary healings and almost total elimination of drugs.
I would move on to the slide on food intolerances. Also here I read some very important things, because 76% stated that they no longer suffered from it. 16% got great improvements. The thing, though, that I want to point out is that the people who were taking medications for this type of issue all eliminated them.
Again, this is certainly a lesson for this dogmatic medicine that deals with food intolerances by doing an elimination diet. That is, if we are intolerant to something, the doctor prevents that food from then being introduced for a certain period of time, when in fact the real culprit of food intolerance is always, again, the Mediterranean diet: bread, pasta, pizza, potatoes, rice and legumes that lead to the alteration of the microbiota and therefore the wall of the intestine, and therefore causes intolerances as well as also allergy and whatnot. So it is evident that changing lifestyle and undertaking the Life 120 style, which is made of course by proper nutrition and intelligent supplementation, well, certainly leads to these healing rates and almost total elimination of drugs.
Thanks to this longitudinal observational study that you did, we also have some very important results regarding atopic and seborrheic dermatitis. So I want to read this sheet. 73% stated that they were cured of it, and 20% got improvements. I'm going to read regarding medication intake. Mr. Panzironi, 85% of the subjects removed all the medications, and 11% reduced the dose. L'85% dei soggetti ha tolto tutti i farmaci e l'11% ha ridotto la dose.
And this again proves this dogmatic medicine that the approach towards these two diseases should not be pharmacological, which is normally expressed then by using creams or topical substances, but by changing lifestyle. And this study confirms to us that by following the Life 120 lifestyle really can heal these diseases forever.
To heal forever from these pathologies is a phrase that I really like when you say it, Mr. Panzironi. However, with you, I would like to talk about herpes and show you this slide that we find obviously in the book, The Healings, that you have just published. 83% of the people who suffered from herpes said they were cured, and 16% got an improvement. Only 1% had no results. I told her to look at this statistic because I read that 100% of the people who were using drugs for this condition have eliminated them, so they are no longer taking drugs. 100% delle persone che usavano farmaci per questa patologia li hanno eliminati, quindi non prendono più farmaci.
Even this statistic teaches this dogmatic medicine that the current approach is totally wrong, because you give maybe topical drugs to try to counteract the appearance of herpes, but in reality it never resolves, because behind the appearance of herpes is an alteration of the immune system. It is clear that by changing lifestyle, thus supplementing correctly and eating correctly, we get to a restoration of the balance of our immune system and thus the disappearance of herpes.
Let's move on to a somewhat sneaky condition, as you often say, psoriasis, because here I read that 68% of the people who followed the Life 120 lifestyle stated that they were cured of this condition, and 25% achieved improvements. In addition, if we go to see, obviously, the medication part, 78% of the people who used to take medications stated that they were no longer taking them, and 17% instead reduced the dose.
These are really important statistics, because we have to remember that this dogmatic medicine treats psoriasis simply with topical lotions or even very important drugs. However, this never completely resolves. So people who suffer from this condition normally do so throughout their lives. and we know that psoriasis is able to damage the osteoarticular system as well. Instead, by following a correct lifestyle, you actually get extraordinary results. And therefore, this dogmatic medicine must begin to understand that psoriasis is not fought from the outside with ointments, but is fought from the inside by introducing the correct lifestyle.
Speaking of interesting results, I submit the slide on autoimmune diseases. 78% of the people in our court said they were cured of it, while 22% got an improvement. I want to emphasize one very important thing, that people who were taking medications for this type of disease have all practically eliminated them, so everyone has taken off the medications.
Yes, it is a really extraordinary result also because we know that those who suffer from autoimmune diseases usually struggle with these problems all their lives and are given major drugs that still go to alter and then risk worsening the disease itself. In contrast, those who follow the Life 120 lifestyle actually no longer use drugs because they no longer need them. Obviously under medical advice, and on the other hand has a major reduction in the occurrence of the pathology itself, and therefore real cures are also achieved.
Here you were right to emphasize under medical advice, because we say that they are no longer taking medication, but this is obviously under the directive of their treating physician. Here this is to emphasize for all the results that we are going to read. I want to submit the enlarged lymph nodes, so the tab on this pathology. 79% of people reported that they were cured of it, and 14 achieved improvement.
This pathology also depends on the alteration of the immune system, and therefore by following the correct lifestyle, by restoring the balance of the same immune system, the pathology resolves.
Let us now look at the sheet on thyroid pathologies. We see right away that 41% of people reported being cured of it and 40 achieved improvement. Note that 45% of the people who used to take drugs said they no longer use them, and 12% have reduced the dose.
A really interesting statistic, because we know that people who are put on medication actually never discontinue it again, so it becomes a medication for life. Instead, we have shown with this scientific research that by following the correct lifestyle, you go to reduce the immune action towards the thyroid, and then this organ goes back to functioning properly, and therefore you can also suspend medication.
This data is really resounding what we read and what we got from this longitudinal observational research. But what should they teach this medicine that you call dogmatic?
There is a different path of care that you cannot address people's pathology and health just by administering drugs, but let your patient know that proper nutrition is the first therapeutic weapon. Then, if it is ever not enough, then you can also administer medications, but not do the opposite. So really, this longitudinal observational study will teach these doctors that a different way is possible, an integrated way that can really bring millions of Italians back to health. If we remember these percentages that I call almost Bulgarian, that is extraordinary results, and we wanted to represent them in the Italian population, we would have the 90% reduction of drug sales in Italy, we would have the 90% reduction of the sick industry, and we would have 1 million healthier and longer lived people.
I want to mention that all these data that we said, the records, the 1,000 records of our court, are within this book written 4 years with our journalist Francesco Gianotti, obviously together with Adriano Panzironi. But I also want to say another very important thing, that all the data in our possession, the telephone records that were made to make this longitudinal observational study, are obviously protected thanks to Life 120. So whoever wants can contact obviously the competent authorities and know obviously all the data. I thank you, Mr. Panzironi, for also doing this very important new work that I recommend obviously to everybody. I thank you. I thank those who followed us from home, and of course see you soon with the Health Seeker. Thank you.
Grazie a voi.